She wants it right at 7 o'clock. Just can't start early.
I gotta get about 45 seconds or so.
What are we waiting for?
20 seconds.
Well, according to the cesium clock up in Old.
Let us call to order the Woodland Park Planning Commission for February 26, 2015. And we'll start out with the call to order and roll call.
Thank you. DeVoe,
Here.
Watson,
Here.
Mattingly, Mella,
Here.
Penland,
Here.
Probst, Rollinger,
Here.
Schrader,
Here.
and Stannard.
Here.
We have a quorum this evening with 7 members present.
If the audience would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes of the previous meeting.
Look good to me, Mr. Chair.
Start of a novel. Very good, though, very thorough.
Move for acceptance. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Request and/or public hearings. A, case FHDP 15-001, Eagle Fire Lodge Flood Hazard Development Permit. Request for the city's review and approval of a flood hazard development permit for the purpose of constructing a 5-room, 2,304 square foot building within the special flood hazard area of the East Fork of Fountain Creek, located at 777 East U.S. Highway 24, Woodland Park, Colorado, as requested by Scott Downs, owner of the Eagle Fire Lodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming out on this cold evening to talk about a flood hazard development permit. This is a requirement per our Title 20 to review a flood hazard development permit prior to construction beginning within any area of the special flood hazard area, and the Planning Commission must review and approve such requests and hold a public hearing. I'd like to just begin by sharing the existing conditions of the Eagle Fire Lodge. This is zoned planned unit development. It was approved in 1997 for a total of 36 rooms or units, and to date there are 20 units in the site. Up in the upper left is the lobby area, check-in area, and then shows the building number 2 that contains 10 rooms. There were 5 cabins on site that were remodeled and serve as individual suites. The back of this building number 1 is shown, or actually that's building number 2, that's shown here from the back parking lot. And then building number 3 used to be the conference center, and recently the owner, Mr. Scott Downs, who is here in the audience, converted this into 5 suites. So the proposal is to add 5 more suite units to the back portion of this lot. But before we talk about the site plan, I wanted to orient you with the firm map, that is the flood insurance rate map that was recently revised in 2009 for the entire Fountain Creek floodway. And this is what we're talking about this evening, is a portion of the East Fork of Fountain Creek. And I have a blow up here, a zoom in of the specific area. And you can see building number 1, which is the lobby, Building 2, 3, and the new building will be set in the area approximately outlined in red. And the floodway is the channel which is mostly underground. This is all piped from Highway 24 through this property, but it does not fully carry the 100-year storm, so it overflows that pipe system at this point. We are looking to solve that problem in the near future, but that's not part of this application this evening. You can see a very small portion of the flood fringe that encroaches into the area where the proposed building is going to be located in this east fork of Fountain Creek. The site plan that was in your packet shows the developed area and the proposed building number 4, as well as the outline of the floodplain, the 100-year or 1% chance per year that it could flood to this level. And shown on the floodplain are call-outs for certain elevations that are called base flood elevations. And those are the top, that's the elevation at the top of that 100-year storm. And this building sits at 8346 elevation. And it is going to be proposed to be built, the floor, 2.6 feet above that base flood elevation. So the site plan, this does not represent a substantial or a change in the PUD. There was always a intent to have a building in this spot. In fact, it was going to be a 2-story or 3-story building, a little bit larger than the one that is being proposed. So there's no need to do a PUD amendment for this. It can be administratively approved. Once this hearing takes place and the granting of the flood hazard development permit approval, then the applicant will move forward with construction drawings as well as a zoning development permit, and staff will review the ZDP administratively, and regional building department will review the building construction drawings, and a building permit will be issued. The applicant hopes to get underway with construction here this spring, in fact, 1st of April, so it's on a fast track to move forward. Here's the approximate location for that new structure. There's already existing parking, so it, as I said, was planned to be at this site as part of the original 1997 PUD. So not a lot of change other than fewer units. David Langley has done some preliminary design work in order to show that the wall structure, the wall section, will be constructed so to flood-proof this portion of the wall at the floodplain base flood elevation, and 2 feet above, a little bit more than 2 feet above it, will be above the ground level. This is the elevation of the 5 units, and then there's also a floor plan that shows the layout for each of these units that will function nicely off the parking lot. There will be a covered porchway here and individual entrances to each unit. The recommendation this evening is for the Planning Commission to move to approve the flood hazard development permit application for Eagle Fire Lodge for the purpose of constructing a 5-room, 2,300 square foot building within the special flood hazard area of the East Fork of Fountain Creek. And I have with me this evening our city engineer, Public Works Director, Bill Alsbach, who is available to answer questions. And as mentioned earlier, Mr. Scott Downs, the owner and applicant, is here as well. So that was a pretty quick overview of the project. And I'll leave the site plan up here if you have any questions about the application.
I have a question just on the staff report, next step. It says Planning Commission is the final review body for these permits. So does it come back here again after that's all done?
No.
Because that implies it does. I think
No.
that's written incorrectly.
Oh, okay. It was intended to say that your review as
is
a
it.
public hearing is it.
The way it
From-
sounds,
From
it's
a
a little
public.
ambiguous. After you, the staff gets through with it, it's you issue the permits and it's go.
Right.
We don't have to mess with it again.
No.
Right.
Okay.
No,
That's
and
just
I
the
might
way I read
mention that that is, the Title 20 is, that enabling legislation is based upon FEMA's requirements. And this, having a public hearing, is above and beyond the minimal requirement for FEMA. I tend to like having a public hearing because it allows for a notification to the public and keeps our community informed, and it also is a good opportunity for Planning Commission to be able to really drill down to any issues.
Bill, question. Back in 1996, and I don't think you were here then in '96, when, this might be more of a Sally question then, when we had that problem on the east fork of Fountain Creek, and then we put that pipe in, that 60-inch pipe that went from under McDonald's and then came down to Sheridan Ave, and then when you made a change in your place, that was extended and it went alongside of the property back around to Fountain Creek. What happened that it didn't cover the 100-year floodplain? Did they not size it right back then?
That's probably the quick answer to it, is the pipe that's in the ground currently behind Mr. Downs' property doesn't pass the FEMA 100-year flow entirely. So some of it starts to come out of the ground there at Mr. Aspidon's property and then flows over land and then back into the creek. Now last year, 2 years ago, you remember, we did an improvement to the East Fork and put a new section of pipe in, and it completely contains the 100-year flood. So short answer to your question is, yeah, the pipe that's in the ground there today just can't pass the 100-year flow.
Because I remember that was a discussion back in '96 to fix that problem, and there was, and then that whole floodplain was supposed to disappear, and you didn't need flood insurance anymore. What about the area would be north of Sheridan? Does that still not meet the requirement for the floodplain, for the 100-year flood? Are those people still required to have flood insurance?
Do you wanna
The
go
property
down?
we used to have there with where the bank
Yeah,
is?
I'm trying to remember, because it seems
Because
like
I
there's
dropped
some-
mine because they said that solved it with the Corps of Engineers.
It's really hard to see here.
It's like there's- All of the structures, I believe, are out, but there is some overland flow that is not contained in that storm sewer system. Some of that 100-year flow goes down the CDOT highway right-of-way and
Okay.
such, but the buildings and the infrastructure are not contained in that 100-year
Okay.
floodplain anymore.
All right. Because in fact, it used to be the floodway came up into that property on the corner there, and then that went away.
Yeah.
And then insurance went away.
Where People's Bank is.
Right.
Does that impact you at all for insurance?
Well, as we
Yeah.
clean this
Have
up,
them- have
we
them
won't
come
have
to
to
me.
carry the flood hazard insurance policy override or cap 5. I'll come up to the podium.
Yeah. In the meantime, Sally, the language of this, if you could help me a little bit, the attachment A of the actual permit, it states repeatedly, it is intended. And if you could, I think I understand it, but if you could clarify why it doesn't say it shall be. In other words, the applicant is indicating an intention, which is kind of a soft, so on the third one in particular, it is intended that the lowest floor shall be, et cetera, versus stating it shall be. Now, in that second half of that, it says it's understood failure to do so might put you in violation. But why does it say intended versus shall?
I think it says that in the beginning of this permit is because this is a pre-permit application. They shall meet those when they verify under number 6, which is the post-construction, that it will be certified that they have met those elevations. So it's intended to meet those elevations with the application, but it will be certified under post-construction. Yes.
Okay, so it's a two-stage process.
It is.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Bill, can you explain what the history and justification is for 1 foot above base flood elevation? How did that figure get determined, just so we understand contextually the value of it?
Well, that's a determination by FEMA, and then through the state of Colorado, puts those requirements on. That's, in short, it's kind of determined that, well, here's our 100-year flood elevation. We want you to be a foot above that because it gives us a little bit of freeboard or a little bit of cushion there so that you're not right on, because nobody knows exactly where those water surface elevations are. But the 1 foot is dictated by FEMA and their regulations, and then through the state of Colorado.
And is there any engineering justification for it?
Well, yeah, there is, and of course, you want to give property owners the flexibility. I mean, you could be even more conservative and let's say it's 2 feet or 2.5 feet, but then that puts more limitations on. So it's a balancing act between, I think, the risk assessment and the uncertainty. There is some inherent uncertainty as to where this flood elevations really are and how the creeks really do act when the theoretical 100-year event comes. So it gives some risk management there and some play.
Because it does say above mean sea level.
Right.
And you're talking, Mr. Downs has got a figure there of 8348.67, which is a nice little buffer he's got of 1.67 feet.
Right.
But again, these things are measured with some statistical question, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So.
Why don't we move to number 3 before we get any farther along so that applicant can present what we're all talking about. If you'd like to come up, identify yourself, where you live, and all those good kind of things. We'd appreciate that, Mr. Downs.
My name is Scott Downs. I live at 710 Sunrise Circle. I've been a resident of Woodland Park since 1981. And thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. I know I didn't really want to. I would submit that most of your questions have probably been answered at this point. I can answer one of the questions that John has, and I've worked with John in that drainage for a number of years. The simple version is, as we came underneath Sheridan with that pipe, it was bigger than the pipe that it attached to.
Yeah.
And when it attached to our pipe was bigger than that pipe. And nobody really knows how, what, why, when, where. We just know that today we have a floodplain and we have an issue, and now we have an apartment complex and a whole series of events that we really didn't have years ago that forces us all to look at this to get it cleaned up. And that's really what's going on. And so we've been working with Bill now, I don't know, it's coming up on a year maybe?
Oh, you and I have been working on this for 8 years.
Oh,
Since
geez.
I got here.
Yeah, that's true.
First silver and
Yeah.
the final.
And if there's anybody here that hasn't been down in that drainage, for our community, it's been a nightmare. The surveys don't match up. They come from 2 geographical waypoints. All of the land down there, depending on which surveyor comes from which waypoint, is off by about 1.5% on the lot lines. And that's from basically Walmart all the way up to Sheridan through that entire drainage. Over the years, as we developed our community, more hard surface. If you've been here long enough, you remember we did a bond issue and we paved our streets. That was a beautiful thing. The runoff, though, wasn't. And so as we continued to add to that hard surface, this particular drainage took a hit, and the line of demarcation from the annual flow that was eroding. When we first bought Eagle Fire Lodge, I could drive my wife's Honda Civic across the East Fork of Fountain Creek. When we finally fixed this problem, we were 11 feet deep, and as we released that water, it turned into about 13 feet deep before we really got going with the apartment complex. The main channel of Fountain Creek in the early 80s was probably about 6-7 feet deep. I think we ended up 20-some feet deep when it was all done, 18. But it was huge. And so this whole thing, like many other things, one of the only ways you can get it cleaned up is through development and the fees and the ways you can measure, future income. So that's your answer to the drainage. What's really neat about this last piece of this thing is that whole section from behind Walmart all the way to Sheridan, when this particular project is done, is pretty much cleaned up, isn't it? That's a big deal. So anyway, I will open myself up to any questions you might have about Eagle Fire, about our project, whatever.
In your 34 years here, have you seen anything even beginning to approximate a 100-year flood?
I'm going to say yes. And last year and the year before, in the middle of an event, I saw Bill out in the middle of this thing. I was at Eagle Fire, and it was scary. But it was contained. And I don't remember the official total, but I believe we got 4 inches in about 35, 40 minutes. And we were filled in our tube to about 2/3 to 3/4 capacity as it released, open butt. But of course, it was under pressure. Mm-hmm. And so it was shooting 12, 15 feet horizontally before it made its turn down into the creek bed. Seen a number of events that have filled that tube. So the fact of the matter is the engineers and FEMA tell us as a community and me as a property owner that this is what it is there. And there's no way around not approaching it from that angle. The fact that I really, for many reasons, high season is coming. The biggest impact of my development is the excavation and getting the foundation in. And in this case, our foundation walls come all the way up to where the trusses sit on the top plate. So all of the perimeter walls and all of the interior walls are built with ICFs. If you're not familiar with that, it's insulated concrete forms. It's foam block. You pour concrete in the middle. Tons of advantages from fire safety to sound transmission ratings to do that. And we would like to get that all done in April before we really get into our heavy tourist season.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are there any other encroachments on the floodplain in this area? It didn't look like it on the drawings I saw.
Not structures,
Yeah,
buildings.
that would be the problem, is if you have multiple encroachments and start causing impact, but just one minor one should not be a big problem.
Mr. Downs and I go back to the beginning of the DDA. We were both one of the original members that were appointed to that back in 2000, 2001.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So, we go back a few years.
We do.
Thank you.
Thank you all, really.
Any other questions of staff? Anybody got anything else? We'll now move to item number 5, and we'll open it for public comment. Nobody signed up? No one signed up? Okay, we shall close the public comment. Okay, I don't think we need any rebuttal. Any final questions from the commission? Seeing none, we're going to encourage a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion in a second.
Thank you. Watson,
Yes.
Manning, Mella,
Yes.
Penland,
Yes.
Rollinger,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Stannard,
Yes.
and DeVoe.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
thank you. We certainly need need it in the community.
That's right.
That'll be welcome.
That's my first thought.
Sally, thanks for your
Before I'll give a little story, just because I want to, and it's only 7-something. In 1996, we were building on the corner of Sheridan and 24, and there was a 60-inch culvert that came under Highway 24, and it stopped right there. And then it was an open channel. And it came down to Sheridan, which had 2 24-inch culverts. Okay? We had an 8-inch rain that day. It was an 8-inch rain. The water came down, took down 40-foot pine trees on the other side of 24. It'd be on the west side of 24. Those pine trees came down and plugged the culvert. Sheridan Ave was gone. It took the whole road out in a matter of an hour. There was no Sheridan Ave. It was totally open. What had caused that was that CDOT maintenance came in and put 100 tons of riprap in that creek and filled a FEMA flood way to prevent any more erosion for Highway 24. And we were involved with building there, and we had grade
Is
stakes.
that your car?
Yeah, we had grade stakes set there, and I still have the presentation board at home about the before and after. But it took that whole thing out of there, and then CDOT originally wanted to put a wall in there, and the city wouldn't allow that to happen. So what happened was, the city provided the labor, and there were 2 catch basins put in, one up at the top and one at the bottom end of that property to go back under Sheridan Ave to solve that problem. You could literally go, and you still could today, you can walk that ditch, that culvert, all the way up to McDonald's grass in the middle of their parking lot and look up through the grate. Because all the water comes from the high school and comes down Baldwin there and goes into that catch basin by McDonald's and goes underneath and then continues down the air. So that carries a lot of water when we get a big rain. But CDOT paid for all that piping and all that kind of stuff, and the city put the labor in, which solved a big problem there. That used to be a really bad ditch along there when it rained. It'd take small cars if it wanted to. Okay, I have nothing else about that. Do we have any information? Okay, I have nothing. Anybody have anything for the good of the order?
So you're back up to full staff, you've hired, that's good news.
Yes.
Good.
That's my first item on my report.
Figured you were gonna tell us.
is
It's
to
exciting.
Announce that we have hired a new city planner. It is the senior planner from Teller County, Laura Pellegrino. She will be starting March 9th. We're excited about that. Laura comes with many years of experience, not only in Teller County, but in Jefferson County. She has a master's degree in urban planning from McGill University in Montreal. So we're excited about getting her up to speed.
Congratulations. It's great.
Second item on my report is to let you know that we're kicking off the Highway 24 traffic study or circulation plan. And on your desk is an invitation to the first public meeting, which will be March 18th. That's a Wednesday evening at the Cultural Center from 6 to 8 o'clock. Purpose of this meeting is to provide a little bit of history about all the improvements and studies that have been done along the corridor over the last several decades. And where we go from here, we'll be asking the general public to give us some input, and then that input will be taken by our consultants and formulated into some recommendations or action plans. We'll also be establishing a small stakeholders group, and that stakeholders group, we would like to have at least one person from the Planning Commission to be on that stakeholders group, and they would look at the recommendations, help prioritize those recommendations, and then by September or October, we'd like to have a second public meeting and report back to the community. So offline, you can let me know if you're interested in being in the stakeholders group. I know John is maybe going to be
I'm already on it, representing
involved
the DDA.
with the DDA. So we'd like to have at least one other person. And Bill's been really the person spearheading most of this. He obtained the money through a grant and working closely with our consultant and CDOT so that we can come up with a plan for the future.
We'll have that overhead expressway done in probably 5 years. I'm teasing.
Sally, should I mention something about the steering committee, since the plan is?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just for your information, I think it'll hit us hopefully at the end of the year, but there's been a steering committee formed to do a couple of things, one of which is to develop a strategic plan for satisfying the community's need for workforce housing, basically. We hope to have well, we're working on an RFP right now. Part of that will be a new needs assessment. You're probably all familiar with the 2006, and then which was a Teller County assessment, and then the updates, which were primarily Woodland Park assessments of the need. We're looking to update that on a Teller County basis. The steering committee is headed by John Schaefer from the council. Brian Fleer is also on the committee, and he and John have kind of started this America West Housing, a nonprofit, got nonprofit status to work affordable housing in and around, in Teller County. So it's all kind of meshed together. So that's ongoing, and the plan is to get a plan by the end of the year and present it to the communities of Victor, Cripple Creek, the Planning Commission here, and the council here in Woodland Park. So I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Also on your desk this evening is the colorful matrix about prioritizing potential amendments to our municipal code. As soon as we do have a new planner on board, hopefully Laura and I can start pecking away at some of the easy and most urgent changes to the code, but with your help, that we discussed this last December. I wanted to make sure that you had the updated copy. And this is really just a helpful tool to keep us focused on what our most important guideline or priorities are. Things do come up like we made that change recently to the auto sales setbacks and removed that requirement. Council did pass that, so that was a nice little cleanup, housekeeping to our code. We've got quite a few things to tackle, but as time allows us to be able to do it, our main priorities are always with our applicants and what's coming through the front door, so we'll stay focused on that. And then these long-range plans for traffic and for housing, it's kind of exciting to have those going on as well. And then lastly, I have is to remind you, March is looking to be a meeting month. We have a meeting in the 12th. The Big O Tires conditional use permit and site plan review will be hitting your agenda for the 12th. And then I also received a conditional use permit yesterday for the March 26th meeting. And this conditional use permit is 105 to 1011 South Boundary Street. It's properties where the dog groomer used to be and a couple of large bays or garages. And Court Wall has recently purchased that property, so he needs to get it now the zoning in place for him to lease that space out. So you'll see that at the end of March, and that is spring break, so we want to make sure that we do have at least a quorum for that case.
I won't be here. I'll be out of town.
You'll be out of town.
So long.
I'm pretty sure I'll be out of town then.
What, are you going down to Daytona Beach or something?
Okay, so
Spring
that's
break.
3
Oops.
out of 9. We still have.
Oh, I'll be on spring break from college, so. I'll be here. I'll be here.
Okay.
Okay, that's
good.
2,
No beer.
3.
Jeff's here. Okay. Well, and Marty. Marty had back surgery
Right.
a month
Right.
ago. She was doing pretty well. In fact, she walked over to the office about a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
But she wasn't feeling too well tonight. Come out. Okay, that's it.
Anything else? Motion for adjournment? We're adjourned.